Globalism leading to communism in America. That's the topic of today's Bold and Blunt, and I'm your host, Cheryl Chumley, giving you a Christian conservative look at today's news, politics, culture, and events. Are you paying attention to what's going on in Davos right now with the World Economic Forum's annual meeting of elitists, bureaucrats who want nothing more than to control all the citizens of the world, while pretending as if their agenda is aimed solely at providing compassionately, caringly for citizens of the world? If you're not paying attention, not only to Davos, but also to how the Davos-type globalist agenda is busily working its way into America's politics and culture, then you're missing the big picture. You're missing the big evil. And before I get into all that, I want to quickly mention, if you like Bold and Blunt, you can get Bold and Blunt at edify.app. That is the online platform for faith-based podcasts. You can get Bold and Blunt at washingtontimes.com. You can subscribe to it there, along with my 3 times a week newsletter. Just scroll to the bottom of washingtontimes.com webpage, find the newsletter section, click on it, find my name, click on that, and sign up for my 3 times a week newsletter. It comes out Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, delivered right to your email box, giving you the bullet points you need to fight these far leftist bureaucrats who want to usher in a globalist agenda into America, as well as my twice weekly Bold and Blunt podcast. And one quick note, you know what? You can just go to Google and type in Bold and Blunt podcast and see that you can get Bold and Blunt wherever podcasts are offered. Let me read you this really quickly. It's a piece on Breitbart that talks about how this Davos-type agenda is working its way through America's corporate world, America's free market system, America's capitalistic system that, remember, is supposed to put profits first. And why profits first? Because profits are pure, profits are honest, profits give an actual picture of what consumers and individuals in America want versus don't want. Profits are the opposite of government controls on economic systems. And when government gets involved with dictating the controls in business, what they do is pick and choose their favorites. And they only allow their favorites to rise to the top and make profits. And when government gets involved, we have things like environmental social governance goals, ESG standards, ESG models that say only those businesses that advance the far leftist narrative of social justice or equity or climate change are the businesses that should make profits. So the farther we get away from a pure free market capitalistic system, the closer we move toward a socialist, communist, Marxist type system where social credits and social justice and social agendas and equity guide how businesses do business. So again, let me read you this really quickly. The title alone tells you everything. Chamber of Commerce details globalist agenda. Impose unlimited immigration, ink more free trade deals. Okay, so let's go on and read from this piece. The United States Chamber of Commerce detailed its globalist policy agenda for the year, including advocating for more overall immigration, regardless of its impact on the nation's workers, along with inking new free trade deals, regardless of the impact on American jobs. Chamber of Commerce CEO Suzanne Clark delivered an annual address laying out the group's agenda for the year on behalf of the multinational corporations that it represents in Washington, D.C. As part of that agenda, Clark endorsed unlimited immigration to the U.S., where employers can import as many foreign workers as possible whenever they need it, by blowing the lid off caps to employment-based visas. Couple more sentences. Previously, Clark demanded that Congress double legal immigration levels, a plan that would bring in a record more than 2 million foreign nationals a year. In addition, Clark continued the chamber's call on Congress to pass amnesty for millions of illegal aliens who are enrolled or eligible for the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, or DACA program. See, you know what this takeaway should be here? That it's not just Democrats who are socialist at heart, who desire to usher in big government, bigger government, biggest government, until finally individuals are stripped of all their God-given liberties, which is at root American exceptionalism, right? The idea that individuals get their rights from God and government is only there to serve and protect and preserve those already God-given rights. It's not just Democrats who have been slowly, busily, quickly in recent times stealing that great concept from individuals in America. Republicans have too. They just do it under a different avenue. They do it for business reasons. Republicans, conservatives in America who put money and profit before individual rights are just as bad and wicked as Democrats about seizing individual liberties. Think about that. It's not about parties anymore in America. It's not about voting for Democrats versus Republicans. The bigger battle, the war in America, is the fight to keep intact God-given liberties. Because the fight for these God-given liberties are coming from both parties, just under different labels, under different little battles, under different little whack-a-mole agendas that we have to beat back. Democrats are just open about it, right? They're just card-carrying socialists. They call themselves Democrats or progressives or whatever, but good Lord, look at the agenda. Compare the agenda and the platforms, the written platforms of the Democrat Party with those of the Communist Party, the Socialist Party, and card-carrying Marxists, and you will see very little difference. They're all one and the same. Republicans, at least in print, in theory, are more about limits on government. But when you get business involved, big business, it's a shame when you remove moral leaders, when you remove morality in business, the same type of things happen in America's culture and politics as when you remove morality from politics. That is to say, the leaders of the systems start pushing for selfish agendas that care little for individual rights. And this is what's become America's corporate world right now. You know it. You've heard all the headlines. You've seen all the stories about the woke corporations and so forth who are pushing Black Lives Matter more than profits, or pushing climate change more than profits, and forcing, because of the control that these financial companies, these corporate companies have with Americans' investments and pensions and things like that, pushing Americans into funding social justice and stripping free market capitalism from America's economy. When you have in charge people with social justice agendas at the helm in America, whether we're talking politics or business, they can cleverly move American citizens, unwilling as American citizens may be. They can still move American systems into funding those systems, funding those agendas. And so Republican governors in America have been busily pushing back against ESG standards in businesses, right? You've seen the headlines about BlackRock's Larry Fink being booted from the pension investments of some Republican-dominated states. But here we have now the Chamber of Commerce stepping in and advocating for more open borders, because it gives businesses that pay fees into the Chamber of Commerce, it gives businesses cheap labor, more money, more money, more money. This is money dominating over morality. And that's detrimental in America, whether it's coming from, like I said, politics or big business or whatever avenue it comes, whatever shape, whatever form it takes. This goes back to founding father warnings of America that we would only have a limited government. We would only have this democratic republic so long as the people in charge, the people in leadership roles, were moral and virtuous. And this is why all roads in America lead back to God. If we don't have God in charge of America, meaning biblical principles, Judeo-Christian principles reign, then everything else crumbles. We have big government. We have an education system that scorns parental authorities. We have an economic system that moves away from the purity of free market capitalism and into the more socialist, communist, Marxist standard of redistributing wealth, taking from one to give to another. We have politicians who just care only about being reelected, and so they go out and promise and advocate for things that are socialist in scope. Because it's a lot easier to buy votes with promises of giveaways than to take the principled stand about the need for individuals in America to be accountable for themselves and their own families. It's easier to sell the idea that healthcare is a right, meaning taxpayers must pay for healthcare for everybody. Or college education is a right, meaning taxpayers must pay for college education for everybody. Soon enough, it'll be housing is a right and food is a right, meaning taxpayers must pay for housing and food for everybody in America. This is what happens when you move away from morality, when you move away from Judeo-Christian principles, when you put God on the sidelines. In America, you lose individual rights and you usher in times of socialism/communism, not just in politics, but as we see now in our culture, in our education system, and in our business. And my guest today has seen firsthand the devastations of socialism. He has fled socialism, and now he spends his time speaking around America, particularly to young people who alarmingly have been embracing socialism in America for the last few years to rapid degrees. So he spends his time trying to educate Americans about the dangers, perils, devastations, destructions, evils of socialism. And I'm happy to say he's here today as a guest on Bold and Blunt. Jorge Galicia, thank you so much for being on Bold and Blunt. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
So I wanted to talk with you about the Biden administration back in November opening the doors for Chevron to do oil drilling in Venezuela. But before we get into that, tell listeners why you are expert in this particular topic.
Well, of course, again, thank you so much for the invitation. And I'm a Venezuelan, of course. I came to the U.S. only about 4 years ago. And the reason I came is because I was an activist in Venezuela, and because of my activism for the return of democracy and for republicanism, I ended up facing political persecution back in my country. In the year 2017, I was basically forced to go into hiding and isolation because the police was after me. One of my best friends was captured in that year because of our involvement in the massive demonstrations that were taking place that year. And well, as I said, I needed to disappear for a long period of time because my friend was, he was captured. And I was sent into a religious place. Of course, I cannot reveal about a lot of information about this place, but I was put in this place. I needed to turn off completely my cell phone, shut down all of my social media accounts. It was a life-changing experience for me. And a year after that, I managed to keep my head down, and I was able to leave Venezuela and come here to the U.S. to do a leadership program. And I was forced to claim asylum. Of course, I cannot return, but ever since I arrived, I kept doing my activism. I've been telling people here in the U.S. what's going on exactly there in Venezuela. I've been explaining to students in college campuses about how socialism destroyed that nation. And well, I'm more than willing to speak about the truth and how evil that regime is. And definitely what we're seeing right now with the behavior and that the Biden administration is taking to approach the Venezuelan regime is absolutely wrong. We're seeing how they are now opening up businesses in Venezuela. They are allowing Maduro to do business with U.S. companies, and Maduro is still incarcerating political opponents. He's still persecuting people. He's still violating human rights. And the Biden administration shouldn't be doing what it's doing right now.
Now, the Biden administration, just like Democrats, will always say that the reason they do business or open the doors to doing business with despots is that the people of those nations are suffering economically, and they don't want to harm the citizens. They want to give the citizens the economic tools to raise themselves up and live in democratic societies. So how do you respond to that?
No, I don't believe that is true. And to be honest, after economic sanctions against Venezuela, at least in the case of Venezuela, something positive happened to our economy, because at the end, Maduro's goal is to remain in power, right? And once economic sanctions hit him, the only way he found to keep generating revenue for his regime was through basically opening up businesses in Venezuela. For example, after sanctions, he allowed regular Venezuelans to import products from abroad more easily. After sanctions, he allowed regular Venezuelans to use the U.S. dollar in cash as a way, as a currency, basically, in Venezuela. This was forbidden before sanctions. After sanctions, he allowed Venezuelans. He basically eased many of the price controls that he imposed during his first years in power. Now Venezuelans can trade goods and services by putting their whatever the price they feel is best. So in a sense, we could say that sanctions forced Maduro to create some reforms to the economic environment that led to a little bit of a change in Venezuela. We're experiencing a bit of a recovery. We're not doing great at all. Even though we are a little bit better thanks to these reforms, there is not like a huge improvement to our economy, but at least we're seeing some kind of change that came after sanctions. Now that all of those sanctions are being lifted, I do believe that we're going to see some steps back, and probably Maduro is going to go back to controlling more the economy, and who knows. But no, I don't believe that lifting sanctions this way is appropriate. Maduro is going to have more economic power to repress the people. All of that money that's going to go into Venezuela is going to go directly towards the military. So it's going to go to funding the political police and all of this stuff. So no, it definitely is not the best idea to do. So
yeah, it's common sense, right? It's just the left always justifies selling socialism as a benefit to citizens, but you've seen the evils of socialism firsthand. What do you tell college students in particular in America who have become enamored with the idea of socialism and would like to see it implemented in America?
Yeah, what I usually tell people who think like this is like, hey, listen, I know socialism sounds good from whenever someone sells to you the idea, it sounds really good, like you're going to have, I don't know, free healthcare, free housing, free education, free whatever. But the problem is that when you actually start to implement these ideas, well, the results are out there to demonstrate that this never worked, right? You see how countries like Venezuela collapsed, like the Soviet Union collapsed, like Cuba, like communist China. I mean, there are so many examples to demonstrate how horrible these ideas actually are when they come into reality, right? So I always try to explain to students, like, yeah, they sound really good, but when you start reading history, when you start reading about other societies, examples of and how these ideas work for these other societies, well, maybe that's when people like this start having a second opinion on socialism and communism, right? Because listen, it is also true that America is facing a lot of troubles. I'm not here to say that America is perfect. For me, it is one of the best countries in the world, probably the best, but that doesn't mean that we don't have problems. For example, I do believe that healthcare is extremely expensive. I do believe that college tuition is expensive. But none of this problem is because of capitalism. It's because of government intervention in these sectors of the economy. So in a way, socialist ideas are already creating problems here in the U.S., and you see how all of these socialists are blaming capitalism for problems that were created by statism and interventionism, right? So I think people who believe in freedom need to be explaining these kind of things constantly to young Americans to avoid them being deceived by these socialist people who, at the end, they only want to control society and be, kings and queens and never be replaced.
Do you see the tide shifting in America at all? Because I've been watching with alarm for years now how America has been turning socialist, and especially the younger people embracing socialism. But maybe there's a tide that's turning on that. Do you see that, or is it really America still hurtling down the path of socialism?
Well, I don't know if the tide is changing, but I could definitely tell you that there is a lot of more resistance from places in the society. For example, in Venezuela, I don't think we ever saw that kind of resistance. For example, in Venezuela, we never had like young groups advocating for free markets, not at least before Hugo Chavez, right? Not a lot of people were advocating for private property rights, for freedom of economy, for republicanism. I mean, before Hugo Chavez, probably the debate was who wanted to do socialism better, something like that. I don't know if you follow me.
Yes, I do.
Here in the U.S., I have found that a lot of people living, even among young Americans, do really care about liberty, and they are advocating constantly for these issues. Organizations like Young Americans Foundation or Turning Point USA. Several young organizations that are doing an extraordinary work on campuses to try to teach and the education that it is not being taught in classrooms, right? And honestly, in Venezuela, I never see this kind of effort, not at least before Chavez and Maduro. Now there are some organizations that are working there, but still, it's not nothing like what I saw here in the U.S. I saw in Venezuela, right? So that gave me a lot of hope, and that's through education. I think is the ultimate tool for us to win, right? To keep raising our voices, to keep people like me who suffer socialism and communism. We should be listening to all of these people, and at the end, I do believe we're going to win.
Yeah, I think you make some excellent points, drawing the differences that here in America we do have at least a couple of really great youth-oriented organizations that are advocating for these individual God-given liberties, whereas in Venezuela you said those didn't exist. So that is very optimistic. Going back to what you said at the outset, that you are no longer allowed back in Venezuela, do you have family there now that you've fear for their future? And what happened to your friend who was grabbed by the police?
Yeah, of course I have more than half of my family is unfortunately still in Venezuela. I wish I could bring them here eventually. I don't know if that's going to be possible. People need to remember that we don't even have a U.S. embassy in Venezuela anymore. That might be changing thanks to all of the approach we're seeing with the Biden administration. Who knows? But but yeah, my family's there, and I do fear for their future. Especially I fear about the fact that I might not even be able to see them again anymore. That's extremely difficult, especially during dates like, I don't know, Christmas and New Year Eve. But and what was the other question?
Your friend who was grabbed by.
Yeah, my friend. Of course, he was released from prison after 3 months of him being captured. And then, however, he was released, but he was forced to present himself in court like every 8 days. He was under probation or something. And after, I believe, like a year of doing this, he managed to escape through Colombia through the border. And now he's living a peaceful life in Uruguay, South America, so I'm glad for him. So, just like me, he cannot return to Venezuela anymore. Of course, he claimed asylum in Uruguay, and wow. That's what he's doing right now. Yeah.
Just to finish up, just give a narrative of what you remember when you were in Venezuela about the horrors of socialism. The empty store shelves, I think we're aware of, but what else did you see that you would like to share with Americans about what socialism actually brings?
This is so horrible to even start speaking. I don't even know where to start. People need to understand that I came from a middle class family, right? My life was not always horrible. When I was a child, I used to have, the latest versions of my favorite video games. I used to have great birthday parties. I used to go outside to eat in restaurants with my family every once in a while. But then in the year 2013, 2014, that situation changed almost completely, to the point where, for example, in my house, we stopped having constant water supply. So me and my mom needed to drive to a certain place in Caracas, fill up some water containers, and then bring those back home in order to be able to cook and clean and all kind of stuff. Electricity started to fail also constantly. Food became a really, really, really hard to find. Either because it was not available in the marketplace, or because it was extremely expensive for us to afford at some point. In the year 2016 and 2017, I basically stopped eating meat completely because it was too expensive. I lost a lot of weight. I mean, my life changed in ways that I just never imagined it was possible. I went from being a middle class, a member of the middle class, to being broke and being all skinny because I was not eating enough. It was so a moment in my life extremely scary. And sometimes, even though I'm here in America and I see all of the abundance of capitalism and that I'm so grateful about this country for all of the blessings I have found here and all of the abundance and all of the opportunities, I still have that fear inside of me that this is gonna end up. I don't know. I feel like this is temporary for me, and that my reality is whatever I left behind. I know it's not rational to think like that, but that's what Venezuela made to me. I don't know. I'm always, and maybe that's why I'm always engaging, in defending liberty and capitalism and free markets, because I know that once you lose that those freedoms and opportunities, it's really, really hard to get them back, right? And I don't really want to go through the same all over again. So, that's what I left behind, and I pray to God that for me to never experience something like this in the future ever.
And just one final question. What do you say when people say, well, that's Venezuela, but this is America? That will never happen here in America.
Well, we used to say exactly the same thing about Cuba. When Hugo Chavez was taking power, a lot of Cubans used to say to us, hey, listen, you're heading exactly the same road we took with Fidel Castro. And a lot of Venezuelans used to reply by saying, no, but you're just a small island. We have all of this. Our oil industry is so big. We're never gonna be the same like Cuba, and all of these arguments. And look at how we ended. We probably ended even worse than Cuba at some point, right? So, yeah, I do believe that these ideas, if they are implemented the way they were implemented in places like Cuba and Venezuela and the Soviet Union, it doesn't matter if you are majority white or if you are South American country or if you have oil or whatever, the results are gonna be exactly the same: poverty, widespread poverty, and social control and domination and the rise of a new elite that is going to be extremely difficult to replace, right?
Yep. Clear warning for America. And Jorge, you have a very powerful voice and story to share, and I'm glad you are in America, specifically targeting youth to change the tide in America and keep America free. Thank you so much for being on Bold and Blunt, and thank you, more importantly, what you do for freedom.
No, thank you again for the invitation. Yeah.
It won't happen here. It could never happen here. That's what the left wants you to think. And you know what? Look at it through biblical terms. Satan loves people who don't believe in him. Satan loves it when individuals think the existence of Satan is total bull. That's when he does his best work. Similarly, that's when the left does its best work. When those who should know better fail to see the truth. So, wake up, fight the socialism. I think we're even beyond that now. Fight the communism. If you look at what's taking place in Davos, if you look at what's coming down the pike with the Great Reset, the World Economic Forum, and how agreeable Joe Biden is to ushering in that Marxism into America. Fight, fight, fight. That's the only chance America has, beginning with prayer to God. Thank you for listening. I want to remind you, if you like Bold and Blunt, you can get Bold and Blunt at edify.app, at washingtontimes.com, or, you know what, wherever podcasts are available. Tune in next time, and in the meanwhile, stay blunt, stay bold.